Hi, my name's Tim Johnson. I've been a prisoner to my past and the pain and trauma of my past most of my adult life, and it led me backwards and forwards in and out of addiction for all of my adult life because I never dealt with that pain. And in this video I want to share with you the 4 steps that it takes to deal with those unresolved issues. Dr. Gabor Mate, one of the world's foremost experts on addiction, agrees that the root of most or all of our addictions stems from pain, emotional pain, physical pain, spiritual pain, whatever that may be. And this is not a quick fix, this video, but it will help you because for the first time in my life I'm free of it, and 2 years sober now because I'm free of it. And these 4 stages that I'm going to share with you are hard. There's no doubt you've got to confront things that are going to be uncomfortable, painful, but it's absolutely necessary in my opinion, because in my opinion, if you do not deal with these things, you will either slip back into your addiction of choice or into another addiction. I watched a program recently of this. It was called Weight Loss Ward, and it was about people who were morbidly obese, and it followed this lady for 3 years. So I'll quickly tell you this now. She was 35 stone, and they gave a bariatric surgery, a gastric bypass consequently. And during it unravelled that during this, the 5 years previously, she'd been an alcoholic, or was an alcoholic still, but I mean she'd been clean for 5 years. And it started ringing bells in my brain because obviously in those 5 years she'd ballooned to 35 stone by filling her body with junk and rubbish and comfort eating and God knows what. And then sort of halfway through this documentary, it transpired that she'd suffered horrendous sexual abuse and rape as a child from the age 6 to 13. And she'd never confronted this. And anyway, they gave her this bariatric surgery and she still hasn't confronted it. And she lost the weight, amazing amounts of weight. Something like, she went down to about 12 stone from 30 something stone. It was incredible. She looked amazing. She was happier than she'd ever been. Anyhow, the documentary left her for sort of 6 months and came back to her. And she was in a psychiatric ward 6 months later. And a long-suffering partner who'd supported her all the way through with the alcohol, the food. She was now hooked on codeine, and she was taking 30 tablets at a time. And because she hadn't confronted this pain. So I'm going to share with you today. And please subscribe and like these videos if you can, if you find them useful, because more people will see them. And if I just help one person, then I'm happy. If my experience can help one of you, then that makes it more than worthwhile. Thank you. Anyhow, Gabor Mate said, we may not be responsible for the world that created our minds, but we can take responsibility for the mind with which we create our world. And that's really profound, I think, because that's what I never did in the past. But I suffered quite bad sort of physical abuse as a child, and bullying, and also my father disappearing, and feelings of abandonment, and Christ knows what else. All stuff that I never confronted, and consequently led me to try and seek comfort and hide from my emotions with drugs and alcohol and food to a certain extent, because my addictions have crossed whenever I've stopped, even when I was really healthy, and I in my 30s when I started running, that became an addiction, and I ended up running 6 marathons because I never dealt with any of this shit that had gone on in my past. There's an old Carl Jung quote, I'm not what happened to me, I am what I chose to become. And you have the choice to confront this and not let it hold you prisoner for the rest of your life, because you are a prisoner. You're a prisoner of it. And if someone's done something to you, if it is abuse or God forbid, because some of you have had some horrendous things happen. I know that, this is not easy to confront some of this stuff. It can be abuse, it can be death of someone really close to you, it can be all sorts of trauma and that you've experienced, and terrible things that you've seen and that have happened to you. So it isn't easy to confront some of this, but it is necessary. Otherwise it will hold you prisoner and you will never find happiness any time in your life. You'll keep going back to whatever it is you're plugging that gap with, or masking that pain with, and medicating. Because like Gable Matty says, it's all about taking medication for the pain to ease the pain. And that can be even physical pain. And then you become dependent on the drug of your choice, or whatever it is of your choice. And you temporarily forget, then you're dependent on the drug then. But when you stop and you detox, you haven't dealt with the pain, back you go again to either something else or your drug of choice. And I'm going to share these 4 stages with you now, and just be aware that it isn't easy now, and it's quite a long process, and it's took me probably the first 6 months of my sobriety. This time I was dealing with some of this stuff, and I'm only just getting through that now and finding this true feeling of peace and happiness inside of myself that I never thought I would feel. Because it will drive you to death, this, if you don't deal with it. There's no doubt about it. Because it's always going to be the underlying cause of what your addiction is. So number 1 is, some of these sound really simple and trite, but they're necessary steps. You need to take them, otherwise you can't confront this. And the people that may have harmed you, because you're the better person for doing this, don't forget that. You're the one that's taking these steps, and even if they're dead, like the people that some of the people I had to make peace with are dead, you still have to do this, go through this, because it's really important you get it all off your chest. So number 1 is make the decision to let it go, whatever that pain is and whatever that trauma is. You have to let it go and accept that you have a choice. You have a choice whether you can either let it hold you prisoner and make you suffer and kill you, and you can lose everything for the rest of your life if you don't deal with this, but you've got the choice to let it go. So you've got to be strong, and you've got to make that decision to let it go, because that empowers you, and that then all of a sudden that you don't have to hold on to it. You've got a choice. You can let that go. Number 2, express your pain. Really important, this. Journal it, write it down. I know it sounds silly. Talk to someone about it. If it's really serious stuff, then you might need to go and see a counsellor about it. But if not, if you don't want to talk to a psychiatrist or a counsellor or whatever, talk to your friends, someone you can trust. Talk to your family. Talk to someone, your priest, or if you're into that, then whatever it is, talk about it. Get it off your chest. Don't hold it inside you. Journal it. Write notes on it. Write how you're feeling each day as well. You've got to understand that you've got to stop being a victim. You've got to get rid of this victim mentality out of your head. And I had that. It was a pity party for most of my life. And I realised that I don't have to be a victim anymore, and it's not going to hold me prisoner. So fuck it. It's got, so I talked about it to people, and I wrote it down, and, it helped me to sort of make that transition of trying to let it go. Number 3, focus on the present, the here and now, the joy of the day, and practice mindfulness, because, don't live in the past. Don't think about the stuff that's happened to you. You're all right. If it's someone if it's someone who's close to you that's passed on or whatever, you kind of forget them and that. But you can't let them, because they wouldn't want you to let it, to hold you prisoner for the rest of your life. So you've got to start focusing on the now rather than the past, and you've got to focus on the joy of the moment and realise it's a privilege to be alive, because it really is. And there's an old saying as well, whatever you resist will persist. So if you resist this, it'll carry on happening and happening. It becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy all the time. What you resist will persist, or what you resist persists, if you want to say it a bit snappier. Number 4. This is the one that's the hardest one of all. Forgive them and forgive yourself. You've got to make an effort. If they're still, you've got to find it within yourself, even if it's something really, to try and forgive them. Even if you don't want to face them, to forgive them in your heart, because They, you know, whatever it was that they've done, they were the ones in the wrong. They were the sick. Or forgive yourself. If you've been blaming yourself for all the shit all your life, you've got to learn. You've got self-worth. You've got to learn. You're not to blame yourself, because a lot of people self-harm because of this stuff. If they've been bullied or told they're useless all their life and they have this horrible self-image. I talked to someone the other day, a young lad who self-harms, and he cut himself on his arms with a razor blade because he said the physical pain was better than facing the emotional pain. So please don't let yourself get into that situation. You've got to forgive yourself and forgive them. It takes a long time to do that sometimes, and it takes you're a big person for doing it, and you've got to be very strong, and it's not easy. You know, it's a hard old game, that one. And because pain sometimes feels like an old friend, doesn't it? You know, you hold on to it and grasp onto it. It's the old pity party. It feels like a comfort blanket sometimes, but you need to let it go. Get rid of it, because it doesn't serve you. It can lead you to death, to suicide, to Christ knows what else. And you know, so it's really important. And they're the 4 steps, and I've took them. I've never been happier in my life. I feel free for the first time in my life. I feel, you know, I feel like I'll never ever go back to where I was before. I feel like a new person. And there's no saying, you know, there's no birth of consciousness without pain. You've got to feel pain sometimes. You don't become awake. You don't become the person you're meant to be unless you feel pain. You know, it shapes you sometimes, but you can't let it ruin your life and keep you a prisoner. I'm going to read you a poem now quickly from a guy who committed suicide tragically. It's a poem. He was someone who was addicted to drugs and alcohol all his life. He'd had a terrible childhood, and he sent this letter to Dr. Gabor Mate, and with this poem in it. And shortly after, he committed suicide. This is someone who didn't deal with his issues. Went downtown, Hastings and Main, looking for relief from the pain. All I did was find a ticket on a one-way train. Please give me peace before I die. The track is laid out so well. We all live in our private hell. Just more tickets on a hellbound train. And it just makes you tingle. It's horrid, you know. Please deal with it today. You know, you'll become a better person, a happier person, and you'll finally rid yourself of these. You know, it'll help rid yourself of these addictions and plug in this gap all the time. So let go of that pain today. Don't be a prisoner anymore. Carpe Diem. Make today the day you do that. Much love. Take care. Bye bye.